Hello, hello, everybody. It is the top of the hour here in Nashville, Tennessee. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I am so glad to have you here. If you're watching live, if you are watching the replay, thank you for taking the time to do that. All right. So tonight we are talking about how to stop riding the waves of your emotions. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel like you are just riding the waves of emotion, like the tide and the current and the rough seas are just raging and you're just holding on for dear life, like on a little boogie board out in the middle of the ocean, just kind of being thrown here and there? I think that's such a common experience for all of us. And it's strange because some days we wake up and we feel good, we feel happy, we feel hopeful, we feel confident. And other days we wake up and we are feeling anxious and panicked before we even get out of bed. And when we're experiencing heartbreak, that can be even worse, right? So, what do you do about it? Why does it happen? Why do sometimes we feel good and sometimes we feel bad? Why does it come? Why does it go? We just don't know. But that is what we're going to learn tonight. So, I'm so excited to have you here. Let's get started. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Bogard. I am a certified life coach. If we haven't met before, I was certified through the Life Coach School. I'm also a founding coach at Virtuosa Coaching. And there is so much that I could tell you about myself, but the things that I think probably are the most important to share as we get started is that number one, I'm divorced, probably like you, and probably like you, and like most of the women that I coach. I never dreamed that I would be divorced, right? Like that never felt like that was an option in my story, but nevertheless, here I am. I was married for 15 years before I got divorced. And the other, probably biggest thing that I want you to know is that I'm a mom, first and foremost. So, those are my kids. And my daughter is 14. She just started high school. And my son is 11. He just started middle school. So, it's a busy and exciting time here at our house. I, of course, am also a life coach. And my mission as a life coach is to equip and empower women to stop living at the mercy of their emotions and their emotional triggers so that you can start rebuilding a new life on purpose that you feel proud of. I talk to far too many women who feel like their life is over, like their best years are behind them and they're just surviving. They're just on automatic default. And that has to stop. No more survival mode, no more automatic default. So that is my mission as a coach. And to that end, this is what we are talking about tonight. So, you can see there kind of what's on our agenda. A couple of things as we get started. I just want to invite you to be present during this time. And if you're multitasking, I feel you. I am the queen of multitasking. And, if you're scrolling social media and you've got notifications going on, like I get it. I totally get it. I just want to invite you to consider that the next 30 minutes or so are really just a form of self care, that you are learning how to better take care of yourself. And by knowing this information, by integrating this information, it's a gift to you, but not only to you, also to everyone around you. So just consider that. And if it's possible for you tonight, I know oftentimes it's not, but if it is, to just be present. And secondly, if you don't have a pen and paper handy, you might want to get one. There's going to be lots of juicy nuggets shared, and you're probably going to want to write some things down. So take this opportunity to grab a pen and paper. So we're going to do a Q&A at the end. Feel free. You have a Q&A box there. You also have a chat box. So feel free to, if you have questions as we go along, you can just, of course, write them down if you have your pen and paper and then save them for the end, or just go ahead and throw them in the chat box. I won't answer them until the end, but you can certainly go ahead and do that. And I just want to invite you, let me just go ahead and open this up. Um, well, oh, there we go. I just want to, invite you to use the chat box. And I would love nothing more than if you and I were like in a room together and we were just talking. That's my favorite. But we have to do it this way. So if you have any comments or questions or, responses as we go along, then put them in the chat box. I would love to interact with you. So that would be fantastic. So just familiarize yourself with the tools that you have available and feel free to use them. All right, so let's dive in. Why are our emotions so important? Why does it matter so much how we are feeling? Your emotions are the fuel for your life. They're actually really important. So, just like you put gas in the car to make the car go, right? Our emotions work the same way. Our emotions are, they make us go or not go. So, said another way, they inspire how we're feeling in the moment, inspires all of our action that we take in our life or our lack of action. Okay. So we're going to talk more about that. We're going to flesh that out as we go along tonight. But that's really an important nugget. So if you are a note taker, I would encourage you to write that down. Emotions are the fuel for your life, they matter. So, in coaching, in a coaching relationship, we really start with just that awareness around how we are feeling, around our thoughts and our feelings. And eventually, we learn to use our feelings in a way that are serving us, that are productive for our lives instead of disruptive to our lives, right? Which is often what happens when we are living at the mercy of our emotional triggers. Feeling your feelings, processing your emotions is the first step in healing your heart. So, feeling equals healing. Write that down. All right. So, how do you act when you're riding the waves of your emotions? How do you show up? So think about this. How do you act when you have those days, right? Some days we have great days and we wake up and we're feeling happy, we're feeling hopeful, we're feeling confident. How do you act on those days? How do you show up? And then conversely, think about the last time that you woke up with that panicked feeling before you even got out of bed. You were already feeling anxious. Think about the last time that happened, or the last time that you just felt really sad or hopeless. How did you act when you were feeling that way? How did you show up? Really different, right? Yeah, of course. Because our actions, the way we act, the way we show up, is always driven by how we are feeling in the moment. So, again, your emotions are the fuel for your life. All right, so imagine this. It's Tuesday afternoon, and your coworker invites you out on Friday night for happy hour. And a few of the people from work are going, and Tuesday afternoon, they invite you to come along. And you're so excited because you don't have your kids on Friday night and you don't have any plans and you don't want to sit home by yourself and you actually enjoy your coworkers. And so you're excited and you say, yeah, I would love to go. Thank you so much for the invitation. You feel really, Tuesday is a good day. It's one of those days where you're feeling productive at work. You were feeling motivated. It was just a good day. You were feeling happy, right? Well, what inevitably happens? Friday rolls around, and then Friday is a completely different day. Friday is a day where you wake up with that anxious feeling. You kind of just stuff it down. You get to work. Your boss has an exchange with you that feels a little bit uncomfortable. You're not sure what to think about it. So you're kind of ruminating on that all day. You're not feeling very productive at work. It's the afternoon. You get a text from your ex, and he's telling you that you owe him money for kids' activities. So, how are you feeling on Friday afternoon? Not good, right? Exhausted, overwhelmed. Are you feeling like you still want to go to happy hour with your coworkers? Probably not. So, what are the chances that you're going to follow through on those plans that you made on Tuesday? Not very good, right? On Friday, you're feeling really different than you felt on Tuesday. And on Tuesday, where you felt happy and excited to go to happy hour, now on Friday, you feel really different. And all you want to do is go home and curl up on the couch with a glass of wine and a Netflix binge, right? You just kind of want to numb out. And that's how it goes. We are always driven by how we are feeling in the moment. And that is why being at the mercy of our emotions is such a problem. Because our actions, like whatever action we're taking or we're not taking, is going to determine the experience that we have, the results that we have in our life. And so it's important. Like, no positive action is going to come from a negative feeling. So it's important that we know how to manage our feelings and our emotions. All right. Do you ever ask yourself this question? Oh, sorry. Because of the way that I'm sharing, this is not building in. And so the question is, what's wrong with me? Okay. So let me just kind of give you that in case this is confusing. But do you ever ask yourself, what is wrong with me? It's like we look around on social media, right? And we compare ourselves to our feed, all of the people and the things that we're seeing on our feed. And we end up, kind of in that compare and despair thing, right? Like, that's a real thing. We look around at all of these people and we think they have it all together. Why am I such a mess? Why can't I get it together? What's wrong with me? And so, what is happening is that we are comparing our insides to someone else's outsides. And we're left wondering, what's wrong with me? And let me just encourage you today that nothing is wrong with you. The human experience is designed to be both positive and negative. It's going to include both emotions, and that's by design. So, no one is happy all the time, even if it appears that way on social media, right? So, we look around, we think everybody else is happy all the time, but they're not. And neither are you, and nothing is wrong with you. So sometimes we're going to feel like crap, and that's actually okay. That is by design. Life is going to be 50-50. So, what can you do on those days when you are feeling terrible, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling hopeless? When life sucks and you are feeling any variety of those negative emotions that I just mentioned, just embrace it. Just sit with it, allow it, process it. And you might want to write that down, because when you embrace it, when you can allow it and sit with it, that is how you gain power over it. When you embrace the suck, this is what I like to say, when you can embrace the suck, the suckiness of the situation, then it will suck less. So when you feel bad, again, just remind yourself we're not meant to be happy all the time. The human experience is 50-50. It's going to be positive emotion and negative emotion. So when you, on those days when you're feeling bad, just remind yourself like nothing has gone wrong here. This is just the part where I feel bad. Nothing has gone wrong. This is normal. It's not going to last forever. But that's not what we do, right? So, how do we typically respond? So you can see here kind of on my pictures, but we typically, like the first picture of this woman yelling, we typically react to our negative emotions. So we yell or we cry or we complain. We are emoting. So we're basically acting out our negative emotion. And this can be confusing because it feels like we're processing our emotions, but it's not actually processing, it's actually just acting them out. We also resist our emotions by just ignoring them altogether and just pretending like they're not even there. So, for example, on those days when we wake up and we have that, feeling like an elephant is sitting on our chest and we can't hardly get our breath, and we have nervous energy pulsing, through our veins, and our heart is racing, instead of pausing and processing and connecting with ourselves and kind of going through this simple process that we're getting ready to talk about, we just ignore it. We just pretend like it's not even there and we just power through. We get in the shower, we get ready, we go to work, and we just pretend like it's not even there. We just ignore it. And so, what we tend to do a lot of times too is to numb ourselves. So, things like Netflix and um, any number of things where we can just distract ourselves. So we like to distract ourselves. And so that's kind of the third picture with what I like to call momentary bits of pleasure, right? So any way we can get that, like what's your pleasure? There's any number of ways that we can get it. We could go drinking with our friends. We could, for me, it's sugar. I mean, probably food in general, but it's typically sugar. It could be online shopping. It could be, watching porn. I mean, it could be overworking. It could be, any number of things that give your brain a shot of dopamine, right? Like you're just looking for anything that you can do to get a temporary shot of pleasure. But the problem is that when you have something more serious, that you're dealing with, and you have these negative emotions that are kind of spiraling inside of you, it's not helpful to seek out these momentary bits of pleasure to try to drown those other emotions out. Because what typically ends up happening is that we end up compounding those emotions because of the the just the natural consequences of our behavior. So, for example, if we do go out drinking with our friends, then we're going to pay for that the next day with a hangover, right? If we do online shopping, we're going to see the bills come through on our credit card. If I'm eating, a box of cookies, then I'm going to see it show up on the scale, right? So, what I'm saying is, we end up paying the natural consequences of these things that we do to get momentary bits of pleasure. And that ends up compounding the negative feelings that we're already feeling. So, the problem with all of these ways that we typically respond to our negative emotion is that they don't work. They're temporary at best, but in the long run, our attempts to run away from our pain, we usually end up creating more pain for ourselves. So that's why this process that we're going to talk about tonight is solid gold. So, in the next few minutes, you will learn how to feel your feelings and process your emotions. And, the truth is that this is the only way to live wholeheartedly. And these are things that we are just not taught. We don't learn these things growing up at home. We certainly don't learn these things in school. And this is huge. Like this is information that can change your life. So, if you're ready, let's go. Let's learn this simple process. So, imagine maybe you've been here where you have just come to the end of yourself. and you realize that what you've been doing is not working. So, probably all of those things that we just talked about, right? Like they're not working. And you're desperate to get off the roller coaster, to stop riding the waves of your emotions. So, what can you do instead? So, in 3 simple steps, this is it. So, step one is to simply identify how you're feeling. So, I just want to invite you, if you're here live tonight, I just want to invite you to do this with me right now. To just close your eyes for just a minute and take a deep breath and just connect with your body and just ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? I would love to know. If you have access to the chat box, I would love to see the emotion that you're feeling right now. But just connect with your body and ask yourself, what am I feeling? And then name it. And that one thing, just that first step, pausing, connecting with your body and asking yourself that question and then naming your emotion is so powerful. And you can do that anywhere in a matter of seconds. You don't actually have to close your eyes. I like to do that. I think it helps to kind of turn up the volume on the inside world when you close your eyes a little bit. But you don't have to do that. You can do this anywhere. And when you can name your emotion, then you have immediately created space between you and your emotion, and you have become an observer of your emotion. So instead of being one with it, you have now created space and you are an observer of the emotion. You've created awareness around it, and that is how you gain power over it. So, just that one step is super powerful. Okay, so step two. So, this is the part where we actually feel our feelings and connect to the physical sensations that are happening in our body. So, your emotions are the language of your body. So, whenever you're feeling an emotion, it's always going to manifest physically. Okay. So, what I mean by that is like there's literally physical sensations that are occurring that are correlating with the emotion that you're feeling. And so, it is so helpful to start to notice and to familiarize yourself with how your emotions manifest physically in your body. And what you'll start to notice is the common emotions that you experience once you start going through this process and you start noticing how they show up for you, you're going to immediately be able to notice how you're feeling quicker because you're going to notice the feelings in your body. And then you're going to be like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, I'm feeling scared, whatever the case may be. So, step two is to connect with the physical sensations in your body that are manifesting with this emotion that you're feeling. So, again, ask yourself, how does this emotion feel in my body? So, this is what I love to do. Okay. When you have the opportunity to do this, of course, you don't every time, but when you do, literally set a timer. Get your phone out, set a timer for 2 minutes and sit with the emotion. Again, I love to close my eyes because I feel like it kind of just, like I said, turns up the volume. But just close your eyes, sit with the emotion, and literally narrate it out loud. So you just say to yourself, like, what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling anxious. Okay, what does that feel like in my body? And then just start narrating it out loud. What are the sensations that I have in my body? My heart is racing. I'm sweating. I have a headache. I have pulsing energy through my arms and my legs. Whatever the case may be for you. But just notice, what are those physical sensations? So, as I said, your emotions are driving all of the actions that you're taking. So it's so important to know what those are. And when you start doing this process on the regular and you start familiarizing yourself with how your emotions manifest in your body, you're going to be clued into them quickly. And that is really, really powerful. All right. So the third step, the final step, once you have connected with your body, you've named your emotion, you've connected with your body, then the third step is to write down the thoughts that you're thinking. So here's why. Your thoughts that you're thinking in that moment are creating the feelings that you're feeling. This is actually huge. I'm going to say it again. Write down what you're thinking in the moment, because the thoughts that you're thinking in the moment are what is creating the emotion that you're feeling. Knowing that one thing will change your life, okay? And here's why it's so important. We are conditioned to believe that it's our circumstances that create our feelings, that our feelings develop as a result of our circumstances. So, what I mean by circumstances is just the things that are happening outside of us, right? So, it could be other people, it could be our job, it could be our bank account, any number of things. But the truth is that those things are neutral. Now, how do I know this? I know this because not everyone in the world would view those things exactly the same. So it's impossible to say that, you know, any like a person or a thing has an inherent value. They do not, right? Because not everyone would agree on that. So this is an example that I want to share with you that I think just kind of illustrates this point. That might be something that you can resonate with. So, okay, I have had, so in the past, I've coached, well, I have one current client and then I've coached another client in the past. Both of, there's very similar circumstance. Okay. So the circumstance is that the ex husband, and it is actually an ex husband, not just separated, but like formerly divorced ex husband, has a new girlfriend and is getting ready to introduce the new girlfriend to the kids. So that's the circumstance. Ex husband introducing new girlfriend to kids. Okay. Now, you are going to have your own thoughts, opinions, and judgments about that. Okay. But that is just a circumstance. So the way that I know that's a circumstance and that that is neutral is the fact that I've had two different clients who have completely different thoughts and opinions about that circumstance. I have one client, my past client, who was like, great, that's awesome. I'm really glad to know that. That almost felt like a permission slip to her. She was like, I'm glad he's moving on. I'm glad he's happy. When he has something else to focus on, that will be good for all of us. It also gives me permission to move on in my life. So it's just good. It's good all the way around. That was her thought about it. I have another client who feels the opposite. She feels devastated. She feels like she still is resisting the fact that they are divorced, right? Like she still wishes that they weren't divorced. She still wishes that she was in his life. And she hates the fact that there is going to be another woman in her kid's life. And so to her, all of it is horrible. And she sees it completely differently, right? And so, my point in telling you this is not that there's a right or wrong answer, but the point is that it's the same circumstance and it's two people who are viewing it completely different. So, what that means is that the circumstance is neutral. And what's creating the emotion are the thoughts that you're thinking about the circumstance. So that's what makes this third step so important is what are the thoughts that you're thinking? Because that is what is creating the emotion that you're feeling. So that's the answer. So at the beginning, when we said, why does this happen? Why do we feel good on some days? And why do we feel like crap on other days? This is the answer because of the thoughts that we're thinking. Now, but here's the thing we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. Okay. So most of them are just running in the background and they're coming from our subconscious mind. and we're not even aware that they're there. So they're loud enough that they are impacting us at every moment of every day. They're like the operating system of our life, but they're not loud enough that we can actually hear them. So they've become like background music, right? Like you're in the elevator and there's background music and you don't even hear it. It's just drowned out. And that's how most of our subconscious thoughts, those 60,000 thoughts a day that we have, that's how most of them are. They've just become background music. But that background music is running your life. And so the value in this is that you are slowing down this process. You're asking yourself this question. And so you are turning up the volume on your inside world so that you can hear that background music and you can pull out those thoughts and determine what they are that are creating the emotions that you're feeling. So once you have that awareness of the thoughts that you're thinking that are creating your emotions, then you can work with that. Okay. So you can ask yourself, why am I thinking that? And that's a great question. It's a great question to ask yourself. Sometimes we think some crazy crap, right? And we can ask ourselves, is that even true? And sometimes, we think that just because we think it, that it's true, but it's not. Our thoughts are just sentences that are rolling around in our brain. Most of them are just things we've been thinking for so long, and it's gone on unquestioned. And so they've become these beliefs that we have. But when you start to go through this process and you raise your awareness, you can start just questioning your thoughts. Why am I thinking this? Is this even true? And then lastly, do I want to keep thinking this? Is this serving me to think this? So I love this picture here because that's exactly how I think about this process. Okay. I like to think about, well, first of all, I personally feel like it's really important to get your thoughts out of your head. I like to do it on paper. I'm a pencil and paper girl, but you could even just, put it in the notes section of your phone, but get the thoughts out of your head. And so when you do that, and you like, I like to look at exactly like this picture, and I feel like I'm putting my thoughts in my hand and I'm observing them, like I'm working with them, right? I'm observing them, I'm questioning them. And that is how we gain power over them. And then you can decide which thoughts do you want to allow back into your mind, and be very selective about that would be my recommendation. All right, so that's it. This whole process is simple. It is so simple, but I am not for 1 minute suggesting that it's easy. But here's one more thing that I want to tell you that might surprise you. So, did you know that your emotions only last in your body for about 90 seconds? And that's really interesting, right? Because so often we think, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that sadness. I don't want to give into that anger. I don't want to, face this or face that, because you feel like you're going to be sucked in by it and like you're going to drown in it, right? But the truth is that your emotions will process through your body in about 90 seconds. And I mean, try this, like set the timer and do this. And so, what I mean by this is the physical sensations that accompany your emotions. When you stop long enough and notice them, and you go through that step 2, where I suggested that you actually narrate through what you're feeling in that moment, like you say it out loud. I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, like this is happening, this is happening. You'll notice that in about 90 seconds, but definitely less than 2 minutes, it will just simply dissipate. And so what I mean by dissipate is that it just diminishes. Like you start feeling, when you first start, like you feel it so strongly, and then it just kind of passes. It's like it processes through. So try that. Try that whole thing with actually setting the timer and focus only on the physical sensations without those thoughts. So, those thoughts that you're thinking, that's kind of another layer. But if you can just focus solely, and that's why I think that narrating it out loud, because your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So, if you're focused on the physical sensations in your body, then that's going to block out any of those other thoughts that were creating the emotion, excuse me, in the first place. All right. But let me give you a word of caution here. So, every time those thoughts that were creating the emotion, every time they boomerang back into your mind, because they will, every time they come back, it's going to create a fresh wave of emotion. So, yes, when you do that process of, step 2, narrating through the physical sensations in your body, you'll notice that it'll dissipate. But every time your mind wanders back to those thoughts that were creating it in the first place, you're going to get a fresh wave. It's going to hit you again. But here's the thing, now you are armed with awareness. So you know that those thoughts that you're thinking, those are what are creating this emotion. And knowing that, again, allows you to slow down the whole process and make decisions about how you want to respond versus a knee jerk reaction, right? So now that you know this awareness, slowing down, responding instead of reacting, again, you are taking your power back. Anytime that you can pause and make a decision about how you want to respond in the face of a trigger instead of a knee jerk reaction, that is power. That is so powerful. That is how you can start to use your emotions for your good. Okay? All right. You might be thinking, but how do I do that? How do I just decide to think something different? I don't get to choose my thoughts. My thoughts just, come. I don't have a say in it. And you're right. That is typically how we operate, right? When we are on automatic default and it's that background music, that is typically what's happening. But that's the whole point of what you're learning tonight, is that you can choose your thoughts. You can choose to change your automatic default thoughts. So most of the time, people think that their thoughts are just them, that their thoughts are just the voice in their head, like it's their own voice, right? But that isn't true. Your thoughts are just sentences that are rolling around in your brain that have been there for a long time, and you've never questioned them. But once you become aware of them and you start questioning them, your mind will believe what you tell it. Write that down if you're taking notes. Your mind will believe what you tell it. Now, it might take some practice, right? Because you've been thinking those other thoughts for a long time. It's what I like to describe as like it's a well-worn pathway in your brain. And so your brain's going to automatically go there, like that's the automatic default. But once you start becoming conscious of this, you can change your thoughts. So, how do you do that? So, this is how you do it. You start asking yourself questions, powerful questions. And so, one question that you could ask yourself is, how is this happening for me? Now, our usual mode of operation is to feel like our circumstances are happening to us, right? Like that's normal. That's how we typically feel. Like if there's a circumstance in our life that we have deemed as negative or bad, we feel like that this bad thing is happening to us. And so, what I'm asking you to do is to ask yourself a powerful question and a hard question for your brain. How is this happening for me? And then again, like I'm all about the timer, right? Like set the timer for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then just start writing down, or you can type in your notes if you'd rather do that, but just start getting out all of the evidence that you can find for how this circumstance could actually be happening for you. So, some questions behind that question would be, what has this made possible? What would not have happened if not for this circumstance? What can I be grateful for as a result of this thing that's happened? So, those are some kind of other supporting questions. And I'm going to warn you that when you do this, your brain, the first thing your brain is going to want to say is, I don't know, because it's a hard question. Our brain likes things to be easy. Okay. That's a normal brain. But you have to keep pressing in. What if I did know? Take a guess. How could this be happening for me? And collect all of the evidence that you can find for how that could be true. And then that evidence that you write down, that is going to give you some new thoughts to practice thinking. All right, so let me give you an example of this from my life that might be, helpful for you. Um, so I had dated someone for a while. It was almost 6 months, and he just vanished one day, basically. So he ghosted me, essentially, is what happened. After we had been in some level of relationship, it had been, kind of on and off to some degree, but we had been together in some form of relationship for almost 6 months. And one day he just simply vanished. He ghosted me. And that felt absolutely devastating to me. I'm not going to lie. Okay. It was tough. And as you can imagine, I was wrestling with all kinds of thoughts and feelings about this. Okay. I was basically, just shocked. I was absolutely shocked that he would have done this because it just seemed so out of character for him. And then, of course, underneath that shock was just anger. And I think that the anger was really coming from this thought that, like, this shouldn't be happening and that this was just wrong. Like, I could not believe that he was doing this and, it just shouldn't be happening. And so it just felt really unfair. It felt very unjust. I felt very powerless in the whole situation, right? And I think that's really common. Like, if maybe that's a result of your divorce or, anytime a relationship ends, like, those are really probably common feelings that we feel, right? But what I noticed was that when I spent too much time, like just on those, I mean, those were kind of like my automatic default thoughts that I was thinking were all of the things I just mentioned, that this was all just wrong and I couldn't believe he was doing this and this was just mean and it was so unfair and, all of that. I was spinning in all of that. And so what I noticed is when I just let my brain go with all of those kind of automatic default thoughts, I was just spinning in negative emotion. I mean, I was pissed. I was shocked. I was pissed. I mean, I was just mad all the time. And I knew that that was not where I wanted to be. Like, that's not how I wanted to be feeling. Like, I know enough to know that that's not an emotion that I want to sustain for very long. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, when it first happened, I certainly don't want to paint a picture that coaching is all about just like thinking positive thoughts all the time. And, it doesn't matter, like if we just think positive about everything. And that's not how it is. I mean, we want to feel all of our feelings. And when it first happened, I really did kind of have the thought of, like, I don't want to be happy about this. Like, I mean, I did want to go through like a normal grieving process, but it started to kind of go on for a while. And I just was noticing, like, I don't want to build a house and live here. I don't want to be here forever. And to be honest, that's where I kind of first adopted this whole process because I used this process for myself. And I did exactly these 3 steps that we discussed today. And I mean, I do them on the regular, but through this particular time, I was doing them like intensely, like I was practicing them all the time. And I used that question, how could this be happening for me? And, like I said, of course, my brain in the beginning was like, no, like it's not happening for you, right? Like, it's like, I don't know, like your brain, it's not going to immediately come up with a plethora of responses, right? Like, you have to lean into it and keep asking. But eventually, I was able to come up with answers to those questions. The first thing was just really kind of acknowledging how I was feeling, how did those feelings feel in my body? And then what were those thoughts that were contributing to that? And then how could I change those thoughts so that I could think new thoughts that would create different feelings that would serve me? And so where I eventually landed was like the thought that I was, practicing thinking so that I could feel different emotions was that everything is happening in my favor, just like it always has. And so, just for some context, that's just a deeply held belief that I have anyway, that everything is happening in my favor. And so when I asked myself this question, how is this happening for me? I was really coming up with answers like, I'm grateful that he showed me who he was. I'm grateful that this happened now, like 5 to 6 months in, and not, a year in or 2 years in. And, I was finding ways that I was actually grateful that this had happened and that, it just all was perfect and everything was happening for me, and that, he showed me who he was, and that that's not actually a person that I want to be with, right? And so it was better obviously to know that than to not know that. And so again, that was just evidence that all of this happened in my favor. And so the thought that I adopted was that everything is happening in my favor just like it always has. And honestly, that thought for me just created a feeling of acceptance. So I could stop resisting what had happened because for so long I was so clenched up in this should not be happening. This is wrong, right? And when I could just let go of that resistance and just accept that this had happened, and while it sucked, I could see that it did actually happen for me and all of this was happening in my favor. And so that felt like a giant exhale. And it helped me to just disentangle from the drama of the situation so that I could refocus my brain and my energy into other areas of my life. Because let's be real, when we are tied up in this emotional drama, we are wasting all of our emotional energy on this thing, whatever the circumstances for you, you are wasting your mental energy. Think about all of the other productive ways in your life that that could be spent. And so that's exactly what happened for me is it felt like a giant exhale when I could just accept that what had happened had happened. I'm trusting that this is all happening for me. And now I can refocus my energy and my brain in other areas of my life. And I can open up space in my mind and in my heart to be able to move forward. So, of course, this didn't take root overnight, and I don't want to pretend that it did. I mean, I'm human, right? I mean, I'm a coach, but I'm also a human. And my mind, of course, would still wander back to the shock and the anger because, again, that was a well traveled path. But I would just always notice it. I would try to stay very present with my emotions, kind of learning to recognize them when they were surfacing. And when that would happen, and my mind was going back to those, thoughts that were creating shock and anger, I would just gently redirect it back to everything is happening for me, just like it always has. And that would just help me to relax, take a deep breath, and move back into acceptance. So that was a very long winded story. I hope that was helpful to you, but it was actually this whole process was extremely helpful to me during that time. So, what about you? Are you feeling stuck? Do you feel stuck inside the waves of your emotions and like you're living at the mercy of your emotions? And if you are, I can help you. I can help you. I have been there and I know how to do it. I know the path. And so I would love to help you. So all you have to do is just to schedule a consult call. It's just no strings attached. It's a free call. It's 30 minutes. We can do it on Zoom or on the phone and we'll just chat. And this process that we've talked about tonight, we can talk about that in relation to you and your circumstances and how this can actually help you to disentangle from that drama and refocus your mental energy so you can see how your thoughts are creating feelings that are leading to actions that are not serving you. And how can you refocus all of that to get to a place where your emotions are for your benefit and they are actually productive and not disruptive in your life? So, feeling equals healing, right? We mentioned this at the beginning, and this is truly the work that we do in coaching. And like I said before, I don't want to paint a picture that coaching is about just thinking happy thoughts all the time and just thinking positive about, everything. I mean, that's not what it is at all. It really is about learning to feel and process through all of your emotions. And here's the thing, when you are not afraid to feel a negative emotion, that is actually the most powerful place that you can be in your life. Because think about how many things do you hold yourself back from because you're scared of failing, or you're scared of being embarrassed, or you're scared of getting hurt, or you're just scared, right? And you don't want to feel that. And so, how much do you hold yourself back because you're not willing to feel the discomfort of that? And so, when you can learn to feel all of your feelings, you can lean into the negative emotion and know that it won't overtake you. You can handle it. That is a powerful place to be in your life. And it is the first step in healing your heart. And again, that awareness and creating that space allows you to gain power over your emotions so that you can use them for your good and stop living at the mercy of them. So if you want to see what this is all about, just use that link, jenniferbogardcoaching.as.me, and schedule that call today. I would love to connect with you. All right, that is all I have. So what questions do you have? Let me go to the Q&A box and see. Okay, no open questions right now. Sorry, that might have come up in your view there. So I will give you just a minute. If you have any questions that you want to put in there, I would love to answer them for you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Oh, I have a question. Okay. So what do you do on the call? Do I need to do something to prepare? That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. No, you don't. You don't need to do anything to prepare. Um, so what do we do on the call? So basically on the call, I like to just use the call as like a mini coaching session, right? They're 30-minute complimentary consult calls. So if you use that scheduler, that's what you're going to see. The option is a 30-minute, it's called a 30-minute complimentary consult. And so basically I'll just start by asking you, like, how are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling in this moment? I often just start, that's how I start my sessions a lot of times. It's like, how are you feeling? Like, connect with yourself. Like, let's talk about it. Why are you feeling that way? Another good question is, what are the top 3 most common feelings that you feel? Like, let's talk about that. And why are you feeling them? And like that just kind of kicks us off into, the coaching session. So, I mean, the short answer is like, no, there's nothing you need to do to prepare. That I have some great questions that we can use to just kind of kick us off and get started. But the whole point of it is, I want you to just be able to experience what a coaching session is like and feel the shift that can take place in just a few minutes. So, All right. I think that is all the questions for now. So if there is nothing else, we will sign off. But thank you again for being here. It has been my pleasure. And I will see you again soon. Thanks for coming. Bye bye.